Hello, and welcome back to Let's Play Alundra. Today we'll be visiting Gustav's house, and as you can see from the bottles strewn all about the ground floor, he's very clearly the village drunk. The game does a good job of establishing him as sort of the secret shame of the village, considering he doesn't participate in any of the cutscenes, or doesn't really get referenced by any of the other villagers in the storyline so far. In fact, this is, I believe, the first time we've actually seen him in this LP. And of course, given that his daughter has severe schizophrenia, obviously they were pretty bad off, so let's see what we can do about this. Maya says that Elene has 4 multiple personalities, so considering that most of the previous dreams were structured around us hunting down their sort of internal representations in their consciousness of whoever we were trying to heal at that time, Elene's going to be a little bit different and a little bit more complicated. Since Elene has 4 personalities, we'll have to track her down 4 times. And we're going to get a little help, which is pretty cool. Maya, for the first time, will be coming into a dream with us, and this is sort of a turning point. I mean, I think Maya is well aware that Alundra's not in such a great state right now that Jess is dead. So she's perfectly more than willing to sort of lighten up a little bit and lend us some direct support. So here we go. The first part of the level is pretty straightforward, pretty simple in comparison to a lot of the other dungeons we've gone through so far. This is entirely a cutscene. Alundra goes in the teleporter by himself. The player isn't allowed to sort of purposely leave Maya behind. Let's cover the main dungeon itself. So you can see there's a ledge there below these little roper guys we've got to kill. They're, in general, pretty easy considering they just charge you. We just have to... They basically walk right into their attacks. Nothing too difficult. What we want to do is get to that switch over there to the right. Now there's a bunch of these little platforms with the arrows pointing off that indicates that you're supposed to fall off on one side or the other. And again, because of this game's screwed up perspective, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to tell where it's going to drop you, basically. I don't believe you can actually get on the little lower platform over there, the one near the treasure chest. In fact, the chest itself is not anywhere close to the vertical path. So yeah, we can't jump down there, and we can't jump to that thing over there. You sort of have to experiment with the perspective and the places you can drop off. Hitting that switch gave us allowed us to access this platform, which we can now use to drop all the way down here. And we can also use that platform to drop down to where the chest is, but the chest just contains a strength elixir, so I'm not going to bother with that right now. Anyway, considering we don't really ever directly control Maya, basically what we're going to have to do for most of the first part of this dungeon is explore specifically with the purpose of trying to trigger Maya to appear so that we can use her to help us complete some of the puzzles that are designed to require 2 people, one or, more than one person, basically. So let's go ahead and get some basic adventuring out of the way. Let's clear everything we can take care of on our own, and hopefully the rest will shake itself out. You can barely see a teleporter there behind that little gargoyle statue, which is obviously where we need to go. Hitting that switch cleared another platform over here to the upper left that will allow us to take this higher path. So what we'll want to do is get to that next up arrow right near where Maya was, and use it to drop down onto the platform that we saw her on the previous screen. And again, we're basically right back where we started, to this vertical platform that we couldn't access from the starting point for some ridiculous reason. Anyway, here we go. This is kind of interesting. This is basically one of the... I don't know. This is weird to me. We're basically going to use Maya as a platform. It's kind of, I don't know, opportunistic, I suppose. It's funny in the sense... Yeah, see, she calls us a Stairmaster. I don't even think that's what a Stairmaster is. A Stairmaster is a stationary stair thing. I don't know, I just think it's dumb to be... We're supposed to be treating Maya as more or less an equal, and we basically use her as a footstool. The whole thing sort of bothers me. I don't know, maybe it's a personal thing. Anyway, I might as well open this chest and show that it contains a stupid herb that we have a million of already. I don't think we can reach the other one yet. It doesn't contain anything important anyway. Obviously, as usual, I'll be sure to show the Life Vessel and the Gilded Falcon for this particular dungeon when we come across them. I'm pretty bad at avoiding these little balls, but, whatever. We happen to pass by the save point in this dungeon really often, so it's not too much of a worry in terms of taking hits. It's fairly important. We'll see why a little later. Alright, so now we've got our first sort of dual puzzle. Maya's going to hit these switches, and a bunch of platforms will appear exactly where the switches are, in the same pattern. So basically you're going to have to watch what Maya's doing and jump in the exact same order. If you fall, you'll basically have to start over again. Hitting the switch again allows Maya to pass, and you can sort of see where this dungeon is going. This is basically going to happen in pretty much every other puzzle or so. We're going to have to do something along these lines. Anyway, clearing that causes the blocking this particular teleporter that we saw back at the start down. Now we can access this kind of annoying room. Alright, so you can see a couple of treasure chests here. I believe they both contain herbs, or in any case, some very easily replaceable healing items. we're going to want to do is basically, yeah, go in here and then sort of puzzle out just by feel how to get through this little maze. This part doesn't bother me in a particular sense. It's pretty easy just by sort of pushing in every direction to figure out where to go, especially since you can see all the treasure chests and the relevant switches, or I should say, that one relevant switch from outside the maze. So I suppose it isn't as annoying as it could be. I'm just obviously not a fan of, you know, basically time-wasting puzzles like that. And again, here's the Gilded Falcon, so the game does force you, for a number of reasons, to go through all the various permutations of paths you can take. There might be some clue in the way the water is structured, but I wasn't able to divine it from before I just made my way through this puzzle naturally. Anyway, that's all of that. Now that we've lowered this wall, we can take this next teleporter to the next room. And we're pretty close to... yeah, we gotta get over here. You can see Maya sort of pacing in a corner. She couldn't quite get up to where we were, so what we want to do is use her once again as a moving platform to get over to this other side. Yeah, head start, make another face reference or whatever, fine. I can deal with this. Hit this switch, it allows us to jump across the first teleporter. We're back at the starting room of the dungeon, by the way, in case it isn't obvious. We can use this barrel, throw it up here, and access this chest, which contains the key to the door we saw all the way back at the start. So actually, you have to be sort of careful not to land on the teleporter that leads you back into the main dungeon, and follow this path to the north instead. And that will bring us to the multiple personality selection room. There are 4 basic dungeons. A fire dungeon, a water dungeon, a sand dungeon, and an ice dungeon. We're going to start with the water dungeon, and basically what you want to do is use that center crystal to select which dungeon you want to explore first. There's no particular reason to prefer one over the other, so I'll do the upper left one first. That also gives us access to the save point. I'm going to show the save room, the full save sequence for the first time in a while now, just to show off how the game sort of pokes fun at the fact that we've never seen Gustav and Elene up until now. So we'll save here, and you'll see each of the segments of the game has a little title the game refers to on the save game sequence, and as soon as this shows up, in Elene's case, it's Elene's 15 minutes, sort of indicating this is her only relevance to the plot whatsoever in the entire game. Which is kind of a shame, because she is an interesting character. She's one of the people who's affected the most overall by village life, sort of the worst off just by the fact that, you know, she had a crappy dad and something happened to her mom, obviously in the backstory, to cause her to be absent. So I suppose she's got depth that a lot of the other characters didn't have until they were sort of set upon by Melzus. Anyway, exploring the water dungeon, our first puzzle is basically just to hit these switches in sequence. You have plenty of time to do so, so the only thing you really have to worry about is falling into the water and having to restart the whole thing. Doing this will basically stop these spiked balls from falling, and it'll also stop a waterfall into the north that will allow us to access the platforms to the upper left and the upper right, which can each contain teleporters. The 4 segments of the dungeon are interlinked, but you can't access the other ones until you break their respective crystals, and in order to do that, in order to get another chance to break the crystals, you have to clear each individual sub-dungeon. So let's go ahead and do that. First we want to come here to the upper left. Actually, really we want to go to the lower right first, but I sort of explored this freely and went in slightly the wrong order. But we can do stuff here anyway, so let's go ahead and take care of that now. It's not obvious from the video, but you can't actually get up to the north part of this room. Those little fountains spewing water at the north part stop you from doing that. Stop you from moving all the way. So, in each of these dungeons is one of these rooms, and you have to get to a corner of this exact room, hit a switch to cause a pillar to raise, and those will allow you to further yourself well, it'll cause a corresponding pillar to raise somewhere else in the dungeon, which will eventually allow you to complete some other puzzle. So it's important in each individual sub-dungeon to make sure you find that room before you do almost anything else. In the second dungeon, you'll see it's directly responsible for allowing us to get to the end, but here it's not quite as important. Anyway, next we're going to go to the lower right. Hitting that switch might change something here in the lower right, but I'm not actually sure. You would see another statue with a water drop on it. I haven't actually found it yet here. Maybe it makes the ladders appear, I'm not sure. Alright, so we'll kill a couple of these guys. You can see now how powerful the Fiend Blade is, and by comparison it kills these guys in 1 charge attack, and actually, I believe it's 2 regular attacks. I think I get sick of trying to wait for the charge attack once we try to fight these 2 guys here up at the top. So yeah, you can see up there at the top there's another platform covered by the sand crystal. That's supposed to be a pyramid, I guess. So once we manage to break the sand crystal, we'll be allowed to access that teleporter and the link to the sand dungeon, which would be nice if we want to come back here and pick up that herb. We obviously don't really need it now. So clearing this room gives us a key, which will allow us to eventually unlock a door somewhere in this dungeon, which we couldn't actually access until now anyway. What getting the key actually triggers is the next Maya event, which is required to clear the room that didn't allow us to get to the north part up here. So yeah, if we go in this teleporter, you'll notice that once we get into the next room, Maya's back. Great. So this is another puzzle similar to the one near the end of the first part of the dungeon. We basically have to hit these two switches more or less simultaneously. Again, this is very loose timing. You have all the time in the world to hit the switches after Maya does, by comparison. It doesn't have to be really exact at all. But completing that does stop those fountains from running, so now we can access this north door and get inside. And this is actually the last room in this dungeon. There's Elene's first personality. So now begins one of the most tedious boss fights in the entire game. These are two enemies very similar, obviously, to the gelatinoid, the first boss fight in the game. The only difference is instead of just hitting them directly, you have to hit them 3 times to get those eyes to move down to the bottom parts of their bodies. They do stop momentarily when you hit them with any given weapon. The safest thing to do is really to use the bow and just hit them 3 times from a distance, at which point you can just hit the eye like that. But this is incredibly slow. These things take a huge number of hits. They don't split up like the gelatinoid does, which is pretty thankful considering the area is pretty small. And there are 2 of them as opposed to the single gelatinoid. But you get boxed in pretty easily, so considering how little damage the bow does, this isn't necessarily, even though it is the safest way to do things, not necessarily the best way to do this without dying. We do have 3 magic charges, which does allow us to refill our health a bunch of times. And we will get to go back to the save point pretty soon, so we can use our magic more or less at will. But this is definitely not the optimal way to fight these 2 bosses, and I'll show off the optimal way the next time we run into one at the end of this video. So I cut a bunch out. This took about 10 minutes using melee weapons. So at this point I got sick of it and just wanted to use some magic. So let's show off the upgraded Earth spell. This is pretty cool. Magic is in fact amazing in this game. It's awesome. Just like in Link to the Past. Anyway, you can use the Fiend Blade instead of the Hunter's Bow, but it's actually kind of difficult to get yourself close enough to the guy to hit him and also make sure you hit the eye. There are certain positions where you can hit him pretty easily, but not the eye once it lowers down to the bottom, so you want to be careful about that. Anyway, that's 1 down. We've got 3 of those to go. As you can see, the individual sub-dungeons are not very long at all. We're basically going to skip out of here. I'll skip the retreading of the dungeon itself because there aren't any unique events. I'm going to hit the sand dungeon next, so I guess we could just warp there directly from the connecting warp in the, I believe, the upper right corner. It's easier just to go ahead and use the magic of television to bring us there directly. Alright, so as you can guess here, we'll be actually making use of the sand cape for the first time in quite a while. Let's go ahead and kill all these worms, just to show off the fact that they also die in 1 hit from the Fiend Blade. It's a nice way of highlighting the fact that the weapons are getting dramatically more powerful. Those 2 chests don't contain anything interesting, but in a minute I'll show you how to get them anyway. Just hit this teleporter, and I believe you want to just immediately go straight up, and you'll fall into a hidden passage that leads directly to these 2 platforms. So we hit these 2 chests, one of which contains a amazing herb, exactly what I wanted. The other one contains gold bar, which is way more useful because we need money right now. I guess I would like at this point to be at max Gilder by the end of the game, considering I'm about halfway there already. But that's neither here nor there. So let's put on the sand cape and get into this upper left platform. Here I've forgotten already that you need to be completely stationary to resurface. You can hear the buzzer. Anyway, let's hit the switch. Does a whole lot of absolutely nothing. But if we wait long enough, Maya shows up. So this is one of the very few points in the game where we actually get to control Maya, and it's not even obvious that you get to do this. You can't do anything or use any weapons. You can just use Alundra as a footstool the same way we've been using Maya previously. And then let these 2 switches, and that's the end of that. I think that part happens automatically. Doing so, or I should say Maya doing so, gives us a couple of platforms so that we can get up, thankfully. Otherwise we'd just be stuck in here for the rest of the dungeon. Which is not very exciting. I don't necessarily trust Maya to take the hidden eye out as easily as we can. Anyway, you can see there's a bunch of columns blocking off each area. Killing the sandworms will cause one of the columns to lower, obviously. And you can make your way through accordingly. Nothing too difficult here. This place is way simpler than the water dungeon. unfortunately, we can't access this door, so I guess once again I went about this in slightly the wrong order. But we'll correct for that soon enough. Again, we had to access the Maya event, and I think we actually need her somewhere else, but I could be wrong. Again, half the problem of doing this in post is that I don't remember exactly what happened during the first playthrough. Alright, so, Sand Cave back on. Let's try not the first room with the 4 teleporters, but the opposite side of the teleport in the Sand Cave room. And that will allow us access to this place again, which will raise the sand pillar, which we'll again be using directly to finish solving this sub-dungeon of Elene's brain. And we'll go ahead and do that now. This is actually required to complete this whole little area and get the key to the boss room. So let's go ahead and go back to that first room with the 4 teleporters. The first one obviously leads back to the start, and the last one leads to a connecting room to, I think, the ice dungeon, so we can't make use of that yet. What we want to do is go down here to the lower left, and you're not supposed to go back up this way. This again leads to a different connecting room, other than the one the other room leads to. So basically each one of these leads to either the boss room or a connecting room. So eventually you can just sort of make your way back up here, and use a mining bomb to access that switch, which will stop those spiked balls from falling. But again, we have no reason to come up here, so you can just avoid the spiked balls, period, and not worry about it. Anyway, getting up here will allow us to jump to this column, and you can see when we jump across the pyramid column that we just raised with the switch in the previous room, that will allow us to access the key to the boss door, so let's go ahead and take care of that. Let's go ahead and skip us back to the room before the boss room so we can show the door opening. Let's go ahead and take care of these hidden eyes the proper way. So, I did say several times now that magic in this game is completely overpowered, and given the fact that we can easily have 1 magic elixir and 1 wonder elixir, especially with the amount of money we have before every fight, let me show you how boss fights are supposed to go in this game. Basically from about this point on, really this probably could happen at any point. Let's pretend like we're going to fight this the normal way, because it sort of didn't really occur to me to try this until a couple of seconds into this boss fight. So after we've gone ahead and entertained the boss for a little while, let's go ahead and use the Earth Book. Let's go ahead and use it once. So we've hit both of them a couple of times, actually, directly in the eye. Let's go ahead and keep using the Earth Book. Remember how important I said it was to make sure that you pick up that 3rd magic seed before you enter this dungeon? Part of the reason that is, although this was somewhat unintentional, was because 3 hits from the Earth Book kills the boss. And, as I said, you go back to the starting point, to the save room, after every sub-dungeon. Therefore, there's no reason for you not to have complete, full magic before each of these boss fights, meaning you should never actually be engaged in hand-to-hand combat. I guess we'll find this out in the next 2 sub-dungeons on the next episode of Let's Play Alundra. Now that we've covered this, I guess I'll see you then.